All right, welcome to Peeps Creek, the cafe where we serve you delightful, slightly intense, but definitely worthwhile conversations. A podcast focused on bringing people together by drinking, listening, and conversing. So grab your favorite drink and let's see what's on today's menu. All right, people, welcome to Peeps Creek, the cafe. You know, here at the cafe, we always have a conversation centered around a drink. And today I am drinking on H2O, boom, boom, boom. That's all I'm drinking on. I'm not drinking on anything else because I had some festivities of earlier today where I already had my alcohol consumption. And I am joined in the cafe by Denise. Say hello, Denise.
Hello, everyone.
And what are you drinking on over there, Denise?
I am drinking on ginger ale.
All right. Is that regular ginger ale or sugar-free?
Sugar-free.
All right. Okay.
We have no sugar, apparently.
All right. So you are on episode 65. Episode 65 is Killer Wife or Self-Defense. This is episode 2 of season 2 of Accused, Guilty, or Innocent. That is a special on A&E. All right. So before we jump into this particular topic, we are here in the actual cafe, and this is your first time here recording in this particular space. How do you feel recording in this particular space?
It feels professional, like I'm actually in a studio or something.
I mean, before
it feels like it's in a studio from this side to the back, and then it feels like I'm at a bar from this side to you.
Okay. So, what you trying to say? My studio is mixed up?
No, I'm trying to say you upgraded. You did a really good job. You must have gotten what is that loan that they gave to
PPP?
Did your renovation?
The PPP that all the Republican senators and were forgiving on, and now all of a sudden because Biden decided he wanted to forgive people loans, not mine though. That is the problem. All right. So, and today is also a special day. We were out celebrating our son's 18th birthday.
18th birthday.
How does it feel to have an 18-year-old?
I don't know. Honestly, it doesn't feel, personally, although I am old, it doesn't feel like I'm old. So it just feels the same.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I am tasked with the responsibility of teaching him how to appropriately drive a manual, because that was his birthday gift, a manual vehicle. And so that's the stress that I'm living in at this particular time. All right. So let's move on to the episode. So the episode starts off in Sanders County, Montana. Mm-hmm. We are in October 8th, 2020. And on this particular episode, like all the other episodes, it start off with some kind of phone call, right? Mm-hmm. And normally when we hear the phone calls on these episodes, the voice or the caller seems to be in distress. Like there are some concerns, or they are having some issues and immediate need some attention. However, on this particular episode, I did not feel like this particular caller was in distress, or was it didn't care whether or not the folks came and help. Okay, so
I didn't actually feel that. I think it kind of more of so sounded like shock, but like I killed someone. You're asking me for an address I don't know, and then the hang up.
Yeah, so she calls the officer or the 911. They ask for the address. She said, "I don't know the address, but I killed someone."
But I killed somebody.
And she hung up the phone. Or we don't know if she hung up. The phone disconnected.
It's so crazy, though, that they still put the recording where the 911 person was like, what the hell?
They said that?
Yes.
Oh.
I was like, whoa, okay.
So we have a individual by the name of Rachel Bellesen. Mm-hmm. She is the accused in this particular case. And obviously, as we indicated, she killed her ex-husband. And so she was the one on the phone. And we kind of then the series then begin to, like, I guess, move to the attorney, right? And her attorney. But I don't want to do that. Before we do that, I do think it's important to give some context to the relationship of the two individuals involved, right? Because I felt like the episode didn't really tell us anything about the other person until
the middle.
Yeah, like the middle, like the episode was almost over. All right. So you want to talk a little bit about the two individuals' relationship? I forget the victim's name, honestly.
Jacob.
Okay.
Jacob Glace is the victim, and Rachel. Rachel was 15 years old when she met Jacob. He was 22, 23. They actually met in Washington. They used to live in Washington, so that's where they met.
Okay, wait. Time out. Why you make it seem like that's just a normal situation?
No, no, no.
She's 15 and he's 22 or 23. But go ahead.
Yes. So they met, and she was at the bus stop
At the
when they
bus
met.
stop, waiting on that yellow bus to go to school. But go ahead.
And he must have approached her. They started a conversation, and when she would turn 16, she had her son, her first son, with him, which is, his name is Orion. And then, so when she had the first son is when the domestic violence started. He was abusive towards her. The baby was born. He stopped abusing her, and then she got pregnant with the second child, which is Isaac, and the abuse started again. And
But it escalated according to her.
yes,
To
because I believe the first time with Orion it was physical abuse, and then when the second one was born, sexual abuse started as well.
Right.
Allegedly, right? Because like you mentioned, Jacob is not here to give us his side of the story, but
yeah, at least the episode didn't indicate that there were any kind of charges
right.
against him by Rachel at this particular time. So it is not like it was something that was adjudicated or she filed charges, or at least they don't make that clear.
Right.
So that's the only reason we're saying allegedly. But anyhow, so yeah, go ahead.
So she stayed with him for 5 years, but it got to the point where he isolated her from family, friends, and it got to the point where she also felt like it was driving her to the verge of trying to commit suicide. So eventually she left him in 2004, and she moved to Montana, and then 6 years later he followed and moved to Montana as well.
So did they make any kind of indication as to why he followed her to Montana?
No, they didn't. They just basically said in '04 she moved with the two kids to Montana, and he followed 6 years later.
All right.
That's it.
All right. So that's kind of the backstory between the two of these individuals. So you have two individuals who have, I guess it's fair to say, a volatile relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that she made it very clear that she did not care for him as an individual, at least through the episode.
Yeah.
And would that be a fair assessment?
It would. I mean, and I can't blame her. You know, she went through the abuse that she went through, and going through all of that, finally being able to find peace, and then having the situation happen again. I can't blame her for, not having any emotions towards this person.
All right. So then once the 911 call clues at the opening of the episode, then we pan to the lawyer and the defense lawyer. And this defense lawyer is the name of Lance Jasper. And he takes this case pro bono.
Yep.
Right. And so for those of you who don't know what that means, it basically means that a lawyer decides to represent the individual for free. Typically, that means that the individual would not be responsible for any expenses. So that would include any kind of background work that the attorney needs to do if they, do a private investigator or anything like that. It is the attorney who is essentially
coming out of pocket with the expense,
eating the expenses on that. Now, most state bars promote and suggest very strongly that lawyers participate in pro bono. For instance, one of the bars that I am admitted to, it is recommended that you do about 50 hours per year of free legal services.
How many have you done so far?
I'm sorry?
I mean, I can find you stuff for 50 hours.
I have already participated in pro bono hours. Thank you. And I am
every year. Make sure you put aside at least 20 hours.
Nah, I'm good. Thank you. But anyhow, this particular attorney, Lance Jasper, took this particular case pro bono, and what he said is he felt some kind of kindred spirit with this particular individual because she is a parent and he's a parent. And what he said was that no one should feel that they should have no ability to use self-defense when one is sexually assaulted, attacked, or potentially raped, right?
Right.
So anyhow, we don't really hear much about what transpired between Rachel and her ex-husband Jacob,
Jacob.
right?
Glace.
We don't hear from her necessarily
Right.
about the events. We hear it from the the lawyer. So you want to kind of tell us what happened in that situation?
Yeah, so what led to the events?
Yeah.
Okay, so it seems that Jacob is having some issues with one of the kids. They don't specifically say which this cat said you're about to pay me some fucking attention. The hell is wrong with you?
All right. So you kind of want to, we don't hear that much from Rachel about the events. And by the way, we are joined in the studio by one of my animals. This is Mr. Fats. My cat, he is refusing to stay outside and decided that he actually wanted to be here. But anyhow, so we don't hear that much from Rachel in regards to the situation. We hear it from the attorney. So you kind of want to tell us what transpired between Jacob and Rachel.
Yes. So it seems that Jacob must have been having some problems with one of the kids. They don't mention which kid, but if we were to assume based on the interview that they do with Isaac, it may have been Isaac because he felt strongly. He had some strong feelings towards his father.
Well, I think you've been nice by strong feelings. It seemed like he hated the man.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically said he was screaming when he was
I
interviewing
know.
about.
You could tell the emotion. It was like the emotion that he was experiencing. Like,
So, do you think that was true, or you think it was camera
no,
ready?
I think it was true.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no opinion one way or the other. I just knew that whatever the situation was, it appeared as if he really despised his father.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
So Jacob wanted to talk with Rachel, about the situation, but they didn't want to talk in front of strangers because Jacob lived in a house with a person, like a landlady, and he didn't want no one to what the landlady.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
What?
Because the whole story of, I mean, I don't understand that concept. Like,
Well, today because I'm already on season 3, so I've been going back to season 2 just for the sake of doing the episodes. But today, watching the episode, they do say that they didn't want to speak in front of strangers, and so that's why they chose the place they chose to go speak at.
right, but okay. We also, this is his landlady, right? I would assume he has his own room, or
Right.
they could be on the porch, or they could have walked outside of the porch. I mean, down the little pathway.
But you have to remember they're about to talk about a situation he's having with his son. So it could have been that they're already anticipating that emotions are going to be high. Either she's going to try to defend the child, he's going to strongly say how it is that, he's feeling towards the child. So emotions are already going to be high. So regardless if he has his room, they may not want to talk in the room because they may, voices may raise and whatnot. They don't want to do it outside because what if they call the cops on them? In a way, I can kind of understand why they would want to meet somewhere else.
Okay, but I guess I get that. But if I was in the jury and I heard that, it would be less likely that I would believe that it was self-defense because they had this tortured history with each other.
Agree.
And so why would you, knowing that there's going to be emotions about it, knowing that one of the children that you're speaking about really can care less about the father, you already know that it's going to be a heated situation. What else? Why else are you going there?
Rachel did say though that when he moved to Montana, he would come around for the kids, school activities and whatnot. And she kept a cordial relationship with him. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that she necessarily felt like she was going to be in danger if for the time that they had been in Montana, both of them, they kept a cordial relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I I guess I get it, but it still just sounds, and it sounds fishy to me. And I think also one of the other lawyers in the
Oh yeah.
defense law firm also had this same question, right? To think about if this goes to trial, you need to think about that perspective. But sorry, we kind of stopped talking about what happened between them. So they decided, what I heard you say is that they wanted to speak in private. They had no privacy because he rented a spot from a landlady.
Right.
And I'm assuming the landlady was nosy or something. But anyway, we don't know one way or the other. And what do they decide to do is to get the privacy?
We don't know, but I'm gonna tell you something. If I'm the landlady,
You trying to hear what's going on?
yes, especially if you're raising your voices. So
Okay, but to me, I guess I wouldn't care if
Was it-
you listening or not.
I do. I'd be like, what's going on? Oh, okay. You know, I may not have my ear right there to the door, but I'll be curious if y'all raising your voices and stuff. So I can, in a way, I can understand.
All right.
So they picked this spot. Is it called Paradise?
Paradise.
Paradise?
Well, he lives in Paradise or something.
Okay.
So, but they rode about a mile or two from where he lived.
To a very, how would we describe this area?
A very weird spot. No lights. No,
Isolated spot.
very isolated.
Very isolated.
No lights. No nothing. Right? It's pure darkness out
Like
there.
that, I do look at her like, Rachel, why? You know, like, let's go to a McDonald's and maybe stay in the parking lot, or let's choose another place. But that place, it was very isolated.
Yeah. Now, to her credit, this is where I will maybe back that up a little bit. So when I stayed in New Mexico, sometimes there were areas where you would go to congregate that was kind of, isolated in the dark, didn't have lights. So we are talking about Montana, right? I've never been to Montana. I have no reason to want to go to Montana, but it just gave me the vibes of very country, rural, in the mountains. And so maybe this was not atypical for individuals to meet and isolate it.
Or maybe it is a
desolate
typical place
areas.
for people to meet and,
Right.
and talk and,
Yeah. So they go to this little area, and then what happened?
And so we cannot forget to actually mention she had just got a new vehicle.
Yes.
So not necessarily that they were going to test drive it, but it was an opportunity to ride the new car. So they go in her vehicle.
Okay, but can we stop there?
Yes.
Because this is about self-defense, right? And see, that was another piece of the story that just didn't make sense to me.
Okay. Going in her car?
No,
Oh.
because what we heard from the lawyer was that the decedent, Jacob, says, "Oh, you have a new car. Let's test drive it." Now,
Right.
but then we heard previously that the impetus of going away from that area was because they needed privacy. So to me, those are two different things. Okay. It made it appear initially, oh, we need to move to this area because we don't want random people to hear us, right?
Right.
But then the way that the lawyer kind of made it appear, at least the way I saw it in looking at the episode, was that the reason they left was because Jacob was like, oh, let's go for a test ride. Those are two different things, right? And so it seemed to be kind of competing to me.
Gotcha. I didn't see it that way.
Yeah.
I saw it more as we want to talk with no one around, but by the way, let's take your car because you just got this car.
And we don't know whether or not he have a car. Is that what you're trying to say?
Not necessarily, but let's take your car because your car is new, so I can see how it drives. I didn't see it as them trying to put two different stories. It was more of we want to get away because we don't want nobody to listen to us. But by the way, you just got a new car, so let's use your car. Let's go in your car.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying that it was two different stories.
It just didn't make sense to you?
Right. So let me just put it this, if I was to prosecute it,
Right.
what I would argue is that there was intent for harm. And the reason there was intent for harm is because we're given two different reasons why they even left that spot in the first place, right? Because if the landlord is in the house, as I stated, they could have talked at the end of the driveway, right? Unless the landlord has some kind of telephonic kind of surveillance equipment where she's listening from the inside to where they are in in at the end of the driveway. You know what I mean? Like, you know, why,
I
right?
hate that you just did this to me because one of the things that the lawyer said was that whatever his name is, because I
Lance
can't remember.
Jasper.
One of the things he said is Rachel is very lucky that she had her gun with her.
Right,
And that gun was in the car.
right,
So now it makes me wonder, did you take your car because you had intentions in killing
right.
him?
And you know what I mean? Like,
So now you put doubt in my head.
well, okay, go ahead. So the story is that they needed some privacy. The Jacob says, "Oh my God, you got a new car. Let's take you for a test ride." She says yes, even though she really hates him and don't really want to be with around
Right, but
him.
remember, she's keeping it cordial because of the kids.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
it is a situation about the kids. So
Yes.
she does want them to have a relationship with their father.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
So they get to the place and she opens, the hatch in the back and she sits, they're smoking and they're talking, but he's apparently, like walking up and down where the area she's at. And then I can't remember how it is that he approaches her. I know that in the conversation they're having, he's complaining about his life, I can't remember what they said, if it was that things weren't working out for him or something like that. Honestly, I can't remember, but he was talking about his life and how things may have been different if they would have stayed married and whatnot.
Reminiscing about the past.
About the past.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so at one point he approaches her like if he was about to kiss her and she pushes him.
Mhm.
She's like, no, this is not gonna happen. But she sees that his eyes, like the glance in his eyes changes, and she recognizes that from when he would physically and sexually abuse her.
Mhm.
So I think they have another scuffle while they're still there.
Mhm.
And then she turns to go towards the driver's side of the car.
Mhm.
And he approaches her and reaches out to her, but he reaches through the pants, through the back of her pants. But in before all of us, apparently when he tried to kiss her, he must have tried to open her pants. And so her button is open. So when she's going to the car and he reaches for her, her pants rip.
Mhm.
But she has enough time to get to the area between the seat and the console,
Yeah.
where she has her gun, to reach out for her gun. And then she turns around, and as he's approaching her, she closes her eyes and shoots. But she shoots 5 times.
Yeah. She shoots multiple times.
Yeah.
And one of the sticking points in this particular case, at least from the prosecution or the officers who investigated, was that at least one of those shots was to the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
And so the officers,
Execution style.
yeah, the officers used the term execution style with this particular case, which created kind of the red herring, if you say, in this particular case, in the hang up. So ultimately, she is charged with deliberate homicide in Montana. It counts with a life sentence if you are found guilty of it. And it's basically purposely or knowingly causing the death of another human being, right? Is what they charged her with. And some of the things that we've already talked about, what we're seeing as some discrepancies in the storyline that we talked about is what some of the things that the prosecution brought up as to why they felt that this was deliberate homicide.
Right.
All right.
Because now as part of the jury, because I always try to put myself as part of the jury, the defense needs to clarify this doubt that I now have with her wanting to take this vehicle, but also keeping that gun in there, and him saying how lucky she was that she had that gun.
But he cleared that up, I think, because when his partner asked about that very issue, why does she have the gun?
No, he cleared why she had the gun. He hasn't cleared my doubts. My doubts now are, why take that vehicle? So were her intentions really to kill this man?
But that was her only car.
Yeah, but they could have taken his.
Right, that's what But so when I brought that up, you were like,
you
nah.
put that doubt in my head. So now I want to know, why was that car taken? Because now that we know she carried that gun with her, was that really her intention?
Well, because the reason they took that car is because it was new, according to you.
Yes, but I just said you put doubt. So I needed the defense now to come and clear that up.
All right. So in this particular case, we have evidence, right? But there's truly no evidence of what happened that particular night.
Right.
So there are photographs taken, but the photographs are taken from days later, right?
Right.
And it's not even clear who took the photographs, but it
She did.
appears that it came from her.
Yes.
Right. And so she had some
marks
on
around
there,
her.
which to me looks superficial, right? But okay, and that's kind of what the prosecution argued, that they were superficial markings and they were markings that she could have
Done
very
herself.
well did herself, right?
Right.
But we also, there were days that passed, so I just want to not make it seem like I don't believe her, but I'm looking at this episode and part of me is just looking at it from trying to look at it from different ways, right?
Yeah.
But part of that could have been that she healed during those particular days, and so it may have been worse the initial day.
Right.
But since a couple of days has passed, they're not as prevalent any longer.
Right.
Right. Now, which side do you believe? Looking at the pictures.
Without knowing about the reenactment.
You mean the production? That was a production. But go ahead, we'll talk about
Because
that.
if I'm just looking at the pictures, I would have believed something happened. Maybe not to the point of having to use the gun, but at some point she had to take this man away from her, right? Because she has the marks.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go now based on the reenactment that they did, they don't mention him necessarily going towards her neck area, and that's where the pictures were. I mean, he tried to kiss her, but kissing you, I mean, I don't know why I'm using my body, right? Kissing you is like this. It's not necessarily like this,
Right. We don't hear that. And
I know. Now that we keep talking about
I
it,
know,
it's
but
like,
I mean, but also part of my struggle with it is that she, as a witness, she was not very emotional when she was telling the story.
yeah, she had no emotions
Right.
whatsoever.
And part of that stoic aspect could have been because of the torture history that they had,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
She was
trauma.
the trauma. She was fed up with being abused and sexually assaulted when they were together. So the concept of being emotional about the situation seems to be non-existent because of that, right?
Yeah.
But when she told the story about that incident, she didn't say like he grabbed my neck,
No.
right? So those key like words or those, even when she was doing the reenactment, she didn't go to her body
At all. And now that we're talking about it, it's like, wait, because the pictures were more of her neck area, almost like the back of her ear.
Right.
And that wasn't mentioned at all during the reenactment. It was more of him trying to kiss her, him trying to come towards her.
Right.
But then, when she runs away from him, grabbing her through the pants. And then that's it.
Right. And so we keep talking about the reenactment. So let's just go there. So there was a reenactment that they did of the crime scene. And this is the defense strategy, because part of the defense strategy is that the officers didn't do what they were supposed to do. Right. And because they didn't do what they were supposed to do to investigate the crime, which means that we have less evidence from the actual event, right? Then it's our job to recreate that so we could then tell the story to the jury, right? So they recreated this, but when I tell you like this was like
It's like a movie.
like a movie, but they had like 18
actors and
actors, stuntmen, they
a firearm
expert. They had multiple people there doing this whole reenactment. And so Rachel was there and she would add in sorta, but I would just argue in the sense of looking at that, I don't think she really added anything of substance about what happened, really.
But they were going based on the report. So the report must have had everything, and she just added certain little facts just to make sure the person was in the right place that she was at, and that the person that was playing Jacob was in the place where Jacob really was when it happened. But other than that, they were going based on the report.
Right. Okay. So they do this entire reenactment. And one thing that she does do during this reenactment is that she shows them how she held the gun and shot.
Yes.
Okay. And what was your impression of that?
The minute I saw her do the way she stood and held that gun, I was like, oh, she's an expert. She knows how to
She's
handle
a
that
marksman.
gun. Yes.
Right. And so that also is part of the issue I have with this particular self-defense aspect of it, right? Is it's not like she made it appear as if she didn't know what she was doing.
No.
Right? She was shooting. And then so the question becomes, did she shoot him execution style? Right? Because once a person is no longer a threat to you, then self-defense is in and of itself removed from the situation, right? And so what I gathered from looking at that reenactment was that after she shot the first one or two, maybe three times, right? Then we got to get past, first of all, you got to get past the first shot, because I think he was hit 5 times.
Yes.
Right? There was no missing.
His body. No,
right.
There was no missing.
There was
They
no
hit
missing,
him.
right?
Yep.
Now, she didn't say that he, again, because this is just what we saw in the reenactment in the episode. We didn't hear anything about, oh, when I shot him the first time, he kept coming. Like, some people are like strung up on drugs or so hyper
so
sensitive
high in the moment.
That they're still moving. We don't hear that, right? So then you get shot the second time. Okay, what happened? Was he still coming? Then he gets shot a third time. Was he still coming? And then a fourth time. Was he still coming? And then the fifth time, apparently he's dead. So the way that I looked at it is that there were some initial shots. Maybe I could see, 1, 2, boom, boom, 3, 4, 5. I'm questioning it. And then there been a shot to the head, and we don't know when. And I think the reenactment tried to explain how he got shot in the back of the head, which is how, according to them.
So one thing to note, though, before we say that, is the fact that we cannot forget that they are drilling into us that she closed her eyes. So she went through, the driver's side, she grabbed the gun, and when she turned around to shoot at him, she closed her eyes. So they're trying to make it seem like she didn't necessarily know if he got hit the first, the second, or the third, which is why she continued shooting. Mm-hmm. But they do, though, make it in the reenactment where 1, 2, and then by the third bullet, he turns around because now he's feeling that he's been hit. Mm-hmm. So around the third bullet, he turns around to try to walk away from her.
Which is okay. And which is all let me, not that I'm cutting you off, but this still goes to my point.
And just remember, I am not Rachel.
I know.
I'm just telling you the story.
But this really goes to my point, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think they did a good job with that reenactment with that, because they did not make it seem as if the trajectory of the bullets caused him to boom, right?
Right.
Because it's like, pow, and then I'm just turning my body. Right. They make it seem like he turned on his own will. And so at that particular point, he's no longer a threat. He's getting away from you because now you have more
But her
power.
eyes are closed. So she can't see that he's really no longer a threat.
Okay, but how do they know that then? Because she can't tell him because her eyes are closed. How do they know he turned around?
This is what they are. This is
their theory.
This is perfect word right there. Mm-hmm. This is their theory as to why that shot was in the back. Mm-hmm. So that's their theory. Mm-hmm. Because 1, 2, 3, he starts turning around. Mm-hmm. So 3 and 4 hit him as he's turning around. Mm-hmm. And then the 5th hits him there. Okay.
So if I was the prosecution, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Mr. Prosecutor.
What I would be arguing is several things. First of all, the defense already indicated in this particular episode that she regularly carries her gun.
Yes, because she goes hiking. So
she goes hiking
because of that purpose.
And I think they also indicated that she knew how to use the gun.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah. No doubt.
Right? They indicated that, right? And part of the reason that she had the gun, according to the defense, was because if she was hiking, she needed to protect herself, whether it's from an individual, a bear, whatever, right?
Animal or whatnot, yeah.
Okay. 9 times out of 10, I'm just saying, if I was the prosecution, what I would be arguing is that this is the individual who knew how to use a gun. This is the individual who purposely carried one. That's why this person had the permit to carry, right? Had it in her vehicle. And you can tell, even if they would have showed that reenactment, you can tell by her stance that she knows that she has a gun, she knows what this gun is about to do, and she knows where to shoot this particular gun, right?
Agree.
So the concept of her having her eyes closed and I'm so scared, I didn't buy it. I'm just sorry, I did not, right? Yeah. And it's 5 shots, right? And it's like, there's a shot to the back of the head. I still don't get that. Like, I can understand you're trying to say that he turned and then maybe his body fell a certain way and it just happened to hit in the back of the head. But honestly, I think what happened is that she shot him, right? And maybe there was a heat of the moment, and I think she finished him off purposely. That's just the way I look at it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I
oh yeah.
yeah.
This episode was hard for me because there is domestic violence, and not just domestic violence, but the allegations are kind of horrible. Sexual assault. No one should be,
Subjected to it.
attacked and subjected to that, no matter if they're in a relationship or not. And secondly, you have children that's involved. One of them hates the father, right? And then you have an individual who leaves an entire state to create their own life, and then this person follows them, right? But then we do have a history where apparently for years there was no issues.
Right.
So why all of a sudden did he become aggressive at this particular instance? Which is why, and I can't say that he didn't, but these are things that I think could lead trails of doubt in a juror's head. If those, if it's argued appropriately, at the trial. But go ahead, sorry.
I don't want to assume, because Jacob is not here to really give his side of the story, but I could see why he may have gotten emotional. This is a man that has those tendencies, right, to physically and sexually abuse, because towards the end of the story, an ex-girlfriend comes, forward and also claims that he sexually abused her, physically abused her in front of her kids,
right,
pull out a gun and whatnot. But I could see him getting emotional because remember, they're in a place isolated, right? So he may have thought, hey, this is my chance to probably get a feel, or let me try to kiss her, or let me see. He's already emotional with the fact that his life is not going the way he wanted it to be.
Right.
He married her. The marriage didn't work. Why didn't it work?
But she's married now. He knew that. She's
married now, so emotions were high that day. That's why he got emotional.
Are you saying that's the truth, or are you saying...
This is me assuming, because that's your question, the doubts as to, but all these years, why now this is happening? Why? Right. Emotions. Sometimes we can't control our emotions.
Okay, so assuming for the sake of argument, all that happens, I still can't get past this fifth shot to the head. And it's not to the front of the head, it's the back, and it's not to the side of the head, it's to the back of the head.
And it's perfect, apparently, because execution style, that means that it was a perfect shot.
Yeah.
But I mean, she closed her eyes, so unfortunately, she cannot answer that question.
She can answer that question.
She can't. She closed her eyes.
Okay. Now. All right. So let's also talk about what the defense argued in regards to the legitimacy or illegitimacy of the police investigation.
And this is the only thing that really saved them, because I think that had this not happened, the prosecution had a really good case.
Yeah, so I do think that's accurate. So what is the deficiency in the investigation?
So remember that she claimed that, we failed to say that eventually they found where they were. And, when the police came and whatnot, and she spoke to them, she told them that he attempted to rape her. So when the sheriffs got there, they failed in taking her to this place. I can't remember what's the name of Safe something. What was the name of the place?
Like Safe Task or Task or something.
Something. They failed to take her there for further testing.
Which is in Montana. Whenever there's allegations of rape or sexual assault, this you take them to this particular location because these are the experts who can gather the proper evidence, and they didn't do that.
No, at all, because allegedly they didn't believe her.
And did they actually? That's the story that the defense gave, that they didn't believe him. The police didn't say they didn't believe him.
Yes, he did. The cop said.
He said that there was no sexual assault.
And when
he said allegedly.
No, because when the lawyer asked him, why didn't you? He said, I just follow orders. And so when he asked again, but who gave you those orders? He said, I didn't believe her, so I didn't take her.
No, that's not what he said. He
Yes.
didn't say I didn't believe
We're
her.
about to play. He didn't say it in those words.
Okay, you adding extra stuff in there. He did not say that. He said I made the decision not to take her.
He didn't believe her.
And and he used the term allegedly because in the episode, remember there was this expert, well, allegedly
Jamie,
expert,
yeah.
but she was an ex-officer or investigator.
She's the one that says he didn't believe her.
He didn't believe her because he used the term allegedly, right? And
we knew he didn't believe her. Just by looking at his face, you could tell that he didn't believe her.
I do think that his body language definitely gave off he didn't believe her. Now, I think
like this was a waste of my time.
Right,
Like,
right. Now, granted, now here's where I am going to call out our own stereotypes on how we deal with victims, right?
Mm-hmm.
Initially, when I saw the episode, I found it difficult to believe everything that she was saying. But as I went back and looked at it again, I challenged myself to look at it differently, right? Because we failed to realize that, first of all, every individual does not deal with trauma the same way. Every individual does not deal with violence the same way, right? And there's also this history between these two where she may be numb to anything dealing with anything related to the trauma that this person caused me, right? So I had to check myself in that regard. And I think maybe the officers failed to do that themselves in this instance, right? Even if they didn't believe her, fine, but let the evidence show that. You should have taken her to this little task force, wherever, and let them do whatever evidence that they normally do because they're the experts in collecting that particular evidence. And if you felt that there was an execution style shooting, because they said this multiple times, the officers, right? Then you investigate it accordingly, and then you make your determination and your recommendation to the prosecutor based upon the evidence, not based upon your own perspective of, I didn't believe the person, right?
Agree.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I think the prosecution's case fell from under them, right? Because yes, we do have the evidence about the other girlfriend, which I don't think would have came into evidence because I would have fought like hell not to let that in because, that's just improper character evidence. She charged them, but I don't think he was convicted of anything.
Right.
So we don't know if it was a felony or any kind of charge that could have automatically come in. Now, in Montana, I don't practice in Montana, so maybe there are some quirks about character evidence because not every state will follow the federal rules, which is what I am examining the case from, right, from that perspective. But anyhow, I think those two pieces were the most damning two pieces for the prosecution. You had a bad investigation and you had unlikable officers who had video. First of all, I don't even know, maybe that's something they do in Montana. I don't even know why they set for a video interview with the lawyer of the defense. But maybe that was part of the discovery process. But it did not appear to be an investigation. A deposition. It was almost like a regular just interview.
Investigation, just like an interview thing.
Yeah. So you do have them on tape, and you can tell by their face that at least one of them.
The second one.
Yeah, that he really.
And he's a sexual
expert.
Is it sexual assault or domestic violence?
Sexual assault.
Yeah.
Which made that even worse because he made the determination not to take her to this unit to do the evidence. All right. So ultimately, we have all of this going on. And so there's a surprise in the case by the prosecution. And what is that?
They want to, withdraw?
Dismiss the case.
Dismiss the case.
But with what?
With prejudice. I cannot say that word. Prejudice.
Prejudice.
That.
But the other one is not with. They want it without.
Without. Okay.
Right. So they wanted to dismiss the case without prejudice. Now, here's the problem with that, right? They could have. Remember, prosecutors have the discretion to bring a case or not bring a case, right?
Right.
And typically that discretion is used at the onset of whether or not I want to charge someone. Normally, when you charge someone and you find out during the investigation or whatever, maybe during the discovery process, that maybe your evidence is not up to par, or maybe there are some evidentiary issues that you don't think, or hurdles that you don't think you're going to get over, you normally would decide not to prosecute it, right? but you don't do a dismissal without prejudice, because then that allows you as the prosecuting
charge
arm to
again.
charge again whenever you felt like it, right? Because murder doesn't have a statute of limitations, right?
But you know, they did say that they wanted to dismiss it like that because they were still waiting on forensics.
From where?
You don't remember when they said that?
I mean, I didn't pay that. I didn't
Yeah,
pay that any attention. I
that
mean,
was
they
the
had the
reason why they wanted to, is it
yes.
dismiss it that way because they were still waiting on some forensic evidence.
From when? They had this case for forever.
But listen, it could have been because another thing that now as I'm sitting here, because I'm not saying that she didn't have no rights to do what she did, right? Because I am still 90% on her side in that she closed her eyes and she
Ain't
kept
closed her
shooting.
eyes. But go ahead.
But we don't know if they're trying to go back to who's the guy that once he dies that checks him, the forensic, the doctor,
the medical examiner.
the medical examiner. They don't bring that into evidence. They don't even talk about that. The medical examiner could say, because one thing that the lawyer was saying was that he wanted to make sure that they knew the proximity of where she was and where he was, because that's how they were going to say it was self-defense.
Okay.
But then the medical examiner could have been able to say from how far that shot happened. I'm sorry, sir. I listen to Nancy Grace every single time, and she had
who's
Joe Scott Morgan.
Nancy Grace is somebody who just be screaming on the mic.
She does, and she gets on my nerves when she does that.
She
But I like
be
Joe
screaming on the
Scott
mic
Morgan.
about absolutely nothing. But go ahead.
Listen, it's not about her. She brings Joe Scott Morgan to her podcast all the time, and he's good when it comes to the forensic stuff.
Right, but the medical examiner will only be able to give an approximation of the distance. But the thing is, he's already examined the body. What is he waiting on to
But
give it?
nobody bought that in.
Okay, but that's their issue. I think
Maybe we
I
don't
think
know.
the prosecutor, the prosecution
If the
was.
prosecutors are listening to this episode, please.
Let us know what was going on.
What forensic evidence were you guys waiting for?
Because I was like, what are they waiting on? What are they waiting on?
I don't know.
To see
something.
What were they waiting on?
That's why they wanted to dismiss
They
it the way
did not
they did.
take her to the whatever the place where they do the evidence. Are they?
But it's not the prosecutors who didn't take her. It was the sheriff
Well,
that didn't take her.
the prosecution should have looked at the file and figured out they didn't have that. Anyway, I think it was just BS. I think they were embarrassed about the investigation of the officers. Maybe there was something about this victim of the decedent, right? That happened. But ultimately, the fight went to court to determine whether or not the charge should be dismissed with prejudice or without, right? So they go in oral argument. That they file motions, of course. Go in, they have oral argument. Both sides get up. They both sides agree that the case needs to be dismissed. The only issue is whether it should be dismissed with prejudice or without. Without prejudice means that the prosecution has the authority to bring it whenever, however they want. With prejudice means that the case is over. The defense decides or argues that there needs to be dismissal with prejudice because the defendant, in this case Rachel, would never have any kind of resolution. This will always be over her head. At any moment in time, she can be plucked from her household to deal with this, and she may not have the same ability to have a good, which I thought this was kind of shitty to say. She may not be able to have a pro bono lawyer like Lance, right? And the reason I think that's kind of shitty to say is that it's kind of given slight, at least the way I took it, to the public defenders, the folks who represent defendants who are indigent or who can't afford an attorney, right? It kind of makes that appear as if these public defenders are incapable of doing their job. And
our girl from the first
exactly,
episode
Brandon was a public defender, and Brandon was coming through. Brandon was coming
she didn't
through
play.
at all. Exactly. So I kind of took it as a slight to that. But anyhow, then the main lawyer gets up, Lance Jasper, and he's all emotional, and that I don't know. I didn't like the argument, the little bits and pieces, and I definitely didn't like the fact that he cursed in court. I thought that
It
was
was almost like as
unprofessional.
if he was taking it personally. Like,
Right.
sir, you're trying to defend her. Like,
You're right.
sit down somewhere.
Right. And as a lawyer, you always want to make sure it's okay to have emotion for your client, but you also never want it to appear as if you're making it as if you have personal gain for it, right?
And that's exactly how it came across.
Yeah, yeah.
Because even the judge, when he said shit, because I think is the word he used.
Yeah, shit or damn or something.
I think it was shit because the judge did like. You using that word in my?
Now, maybe they do that in Montana, but if we were here in
I
federal
doubt it,
court,
because the way that judge looked at him, she looked at him like, I'm gonna let you pass this one, but let's not make it, let's not do this again.
yeah. But ultimately, the judge ruled, and what does she rule?
Dismiss with prejudice, however.
Prejudice, yeah. So Rachel does not have to defend against the claim of deliberate homicide.
Yep.
All right, so that is that episode. All right, so I thought I wasn't going to like talking about this episode, but I felt like it had so many good evidentiary issues to navigate through.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that we had kind of our positions one way or the other. Maybe my position didn't never change necessarily.
I was the only one, and it was only after you said what you said.
Uh,
That's the only doubt I had.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. I'm not doubting that she felt that she had to use the gun. What I'm doubting is it truly self-defense at this point? Because,
because that's their case, self-defense.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that is episode 65. Episode 65 is, what was the name of the episode? Killer wife or self-defense, right? Accused, guilty, or innocent. Make sure you go ahead, you look at the episode, you decide. I'm sure there are people who are out there who will not agree with anything that we said, and that's perfectly fine. But that's the beauty of our judicial system, is that you have individuals who have different perspectives about what the evidence shows. But I like these series because you can see different things, and you can also see how a random situation can turn into something bigger, right? From a legal perspective.
And if any of the defense attorneys or the prosecutors are listening to our podcast like they did on the first season and decide to go in and start putting comments under, again, keep in mind this is our opinion and we have a right to give our opinion.
Oh God.
That was hilarious. I'm like, girl, go sit down somewhere. You got nothing else better to do.
All right. So make sure that you go ahead and check us out on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Twitch at Peeps Creek. We are at Peeps Creek Cafe on Facebook. We are Peeps Creek Podcast on YouTube. You can send us an email at cafe@peepscreek.com, and you can go on the website, peepscreek.com, to look at the videos, as well as if you want to get a transcription along with the video, is available on the website as well. But yeah, I want to thank Denise for coming in. You want to say anything to the people?
It's always a pleasure. Sean had me in punishment for no reason, but it's always a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
All right. Until next time, make sure that you continue to drink, listen, and converse. And we are going to say peace and love.
So lame. The L is for lame. Loser.
It is for love.